Morning, students. So today we are going to discuss a very important and very interesting topic, that is gluconeogenesis. So till now we have seen like how to break down a molecule, but in this class we are going to see how to make up a molecule. Like as we discussed, metabolism has two parts: anabolism and catabolism. Right. So catabolism means breakdown. Till now we have seen the breakdown of glucose, but in this class we are going to see about the making up of glucose. So it's actually called as gluconeogenesis. So genesis means makeup or creation. Genesis means creation. Neo means new. So creating new glucose from what? So gluconeogenesis means synthesis of glucose from non-carbohydrate source. So synthesis of glucose from non-carbohydrate source is known as gluconeogenesis. Okay, so where it occurs? Okay, first let me share my screen, then we'll discuss. So hope you are seeing my screen. So gluconeogenesis means creation or the formation of sugar from non-carbohydrate source. So it's a metabolic pathway, or you can also say it as an anabolic pathway that results in the generation of glucose from certain non-carbohydrate sources. So it is present in plants, animals, fungi, bacteria, and other microorganisms also it is there. So it's not new concept, it's a very old concept. So the major precursors or the substrates for the gluconeogenesis are lactate, then pyruvate, other glucogenic amino acids like alanine. Then we also require alpha ketoglutarate, then propionic acid, then glycerol. Because glycerol can be converted into acetyl, and that acetyl CoA can be converted via citric acid cycle into oxaloacetate, right? So that oxaloacetate is necessary for the conversion of pyruvate to uh, phosphoenol pyruvate. So we'll see that all these processes in the next slides. But the major precursors of gluconeogenesis are lactate, pyruvate, then glucogenic amino acids like alanine. Because it is very simple, just by transamination we can convert this alanine into the required components. So we'll see that in the future slides. So then propionate, then glycerol. So these are the simple precursors or substrates for gluconeogenesis. Okay. So in vertebrates, this gluconeogenesis occurs mainly in the liver. So we know that the liver has a predominant function in the human body. So because it is not only it secretes bile, and not only it does a fatty acid metabolism, but also it mainly involves in the synthesis of glucose from non-carbohydrate source, that is gluconeogenesis, and also in the metabolism of glycogen, the metabolism of glycogen. So the excess glucose is stored as glycogen, and the glycogen in our, whenever there is a necessity, it is converted back into glucose. So all this metabolism is done by liver itself. So either glycogen metabolism or gluconeogenesis or fatty acid metabolism, every single step is very important in our living system, and all this is a place of occurrence, that is the liver. It also occurs in erythrocytes, that is the red blood cells, liver, and the kidneys. A small portion will occur in the kidneys, and also in the small intestines, that is the epithelial cells. And in mammals, so you know that mammals are the organisms which can feed milk to their offspring. So these are mammals through their mammary glands. So in mammals, some tissues depend mainly on the glucose, that is like brain and muscles, skeletal muscles, smooth muscles. So all these depend upon the glucose as their fuel, as a major fuel. So in conditions where there is a less glucose, or in case of strenuous exercise, we require a lot of glucose. In such cases, glucose is synthesized as gluconeogenesis from the non-carbohydrate sources. So especially in cases where brain, because the human brain requires about 120 grams of glucose. 120 grams of glucose is needed by only brain to function. It can take the glycogen and convert it into glucose, or it can also synthesize glucose from non-carbohydrate sources, which are the precursors of glucose. So like this, we can maintain the glucose levels in the body, either in the form of glycogen or in the form of breakdown of carbohydrates, or in the form of gluconeogenesis, because the brain requires 120 grams of glucose each day for its functioning. Next. So glucose and its derivatives are the synthesis of the plant cell wall. So what is the significance of these precursors? Now, apart from participating in the gluconeogenesis, we can also synthesize the cell walls in plants, and we can have a number of nucleotides or coenzymes and a variety of other essential metabolites. So in many microorganisms, the gluconeogenesis starts from a single organic compound of 2 or 3 carbons in nature, such as acetate, lactate, or propionate in their growth medium. So in many microorganisms, if you want to grow them, we can just grow them with either in the form of acetate. So if you add an acetate or a lactate or a propionate in the broth medium, they can grow because of the existence of gluconeogenesis in them. And but the thing is, actually what they say is the gluconeogenesis or glycolysis, they are the reverse pathways. They are the reverse pathways. Do you agree with this? Actually, we know that there are 10 steps in the glycolysis, out of which 7 steps are reversible and there are 3 irreversible steps. But if we want to synthesize glucose from non-carbohydrate sources, definitely we should have a mechanism to reverse the glycolysis. Then only we are able to synthesize glucose. Am I correct? Do you agree with this? Yes. What is glycolysis? Why I am saying it is the reverse? Because glycolysis is a pathway where glucose is broken down into pyruvate or lactate. Now, I am saying pyruvate or lactate are the precursors for the synthesis of glucose. Correct? So, gluconeogenesis and glycolysis, they are always the reverse mechanisms. Whereas, the thing is, we have to take care about 3 irreversible steps in glycolysis. If we can reverse those 3 irreversible steps in glycolysis through an alternative bypass mechanisms, then we can synthesize glucose from lactate or pyruvate. Am I correct? Yeah. So today we are going to discuss about what is gluconeogenesis. We already seen the introduction for gluconeogenesis. Then we are also going to see how we can reverse the 3 irreversible steps so that we can synthesize glucose from the pyruvate or lactate or as well as oxaloacetate and also from acetyl-CoA. So the reversible steps of glycolysis, they can manage with the enzymes that are already available. That's what we are calling it as reversible, because if the enzyme is there, it can do both the functions, converting from product to the substrates and converting the substrates to the product. So it can do both the ways with the same enzyme. But the thing is, however, there are three irreversible steps in glycolysis that has to be reversed by the help of alternative pathways, and those are discussed in the future slides. So the three irreversible steps are the conversion of glucose to glucose 6-phosphate by hexokinase. So this is irreversible, and the phosphorylation of fructose 6-phosphate to fructose 1,6-bisphosphate, even this is reversible, and the conversion of phosphoenol pyruvate to pyruvate by pyruvate kinase. So all these three enzymes, they are doing only a forward reaction. They are not doing a reverse reaction. So we have to bypass these three steps in order to synthesize the glucose. So these are bypassed by a set of separate enzymes catalyzing the reactions that are sufficiently exergonic to be efficiently irreversible the directions of the glucose synthesis. So if we have to reverse these three steps, we have to have more amount of energy in the form of exergonic reactions. So how do we do that? We'll see in the next slides. So so here I can conclude that both glycolysis and gluconeogenesis are irreversible process in cells. So once the glucose is converted into pyruvic acid, we cannot get back glucose unless we can reverse through gluconeogenesis, and also three separate enzymes are required to catalyze the three irreversible steps of glycolysis. If we have created glucose in the form of gluconeogenesis, we cannot take it back. The precursors, we cannot take it back. So these two processes, either glycolysis or gluconeogenesis, are irreversible processes. So in animals, both pathways occur largely in the cytosol. Either glycolysis or gluconeogenesis, both occurs in cytosol, as well as a few steps that can occur in mitochondria of the cells. So and here there is one more thing. The citric acid cycle can provide some of the intermediates for the synthesis of glucose. So I already said that the Krebs cycle is a both catabolic as well as anabolic in nature. Hence, some of these intermediates of this Krebs cycle can be utilized for the gluconeogenesis. How? We'll see. So it is actually involved in gluconeogenesis because of the transamination and also deamination can occur, and there are some amino acids that can participate in Krebs cycle as well as in the amino acid metabolism. So I think we have already seen this while we discuss about the Krebs cycle. I have shown a picture. Don't worry, I'm going to show it again. So how come is this oxaloacetate and alpha ketoglutarate respectively, they serve as a precursors in the synthesis of aspartate and glutamate, while in turn are required for the synthesis of non-essential amino acids, purines and pyrimidines. So these oxaloacetate and alpha ketoglutarate. So these are the intermediates of the PCA cycle, which will help in the synthesis of gluconeogenesis and also amino acids such as aspartate and glutamate. So how? We'll see. Then the succinyl CoA is used for the synthesis of porphyrins and heme. So this is not our concern for today's topic, but these TCA cycle intermediates, how they are helpful, I'm sharing here. The third one is the citrate. which is transported in the cytosol, where it is converted to pyruvate. Sorry, it is converted into acetyl CoA for the biosynthesis of fatty acids. So these are the main TCA cycle intermediates which can helpful for this synthesis of other biological compounds. Now, the most important thing what I am talking about is oxaloacetate and this alpha keto glutarate. So we'll see about these two things, how they can be utilized for our gluconeogenesis. Now, so the role of citric acid cycle in anabolism. So we are going to see the intermediates of citric acid cycle are known to pay up the precursors in many biological pathways. So we have seen even in case of the other slide also. 1 second. So this was the image what I was supposed to show, but actually I don't know why it didn't come out in. See here, this malate can be converted into pyruvate. I think you are able to see. Yeah. So this malate can be converted into pyruvate by malic enzyme, and this oxaloacetate can be converted into aspartate as well as it can be converted into pyruvate. So malate, oxaloacetate, they can participate in gluconeogenesis. So this is how the citric acid intermediates, and also I told that alpha ketoglutarate. So we require this alpha ketoglutarate for transamination. We'll see this transamination step in the future slides. So how this transamination via alpha ketoglutarate is essential for gluconeogenesis. So we'll see in the future slides. So actually there is a cycle called as a Cori cycle. And I think we have already seen this slide. I mean this image what I'm showing here. So malate is converted into pyruvate by malic enzyme, and this oxaloacetate can be converted directly to pyruvate, or pyruvate can be converted into oxaloacetate via this enzyme called as pyruvate carboxylase. Then this oxaloacetate can be directly converted into PEP. So we are bypassing. If we want to convert pyruvate to PEP, we have to go through this oxaloacetate. So pyruvate to oxaloacetate and oxaloacetate to PEP. But we require malate. So how we require malate, we'll see in the next slides. Just remember that if we actually this conversion of PEP to pyruvate is a irreversible process. If you want to reverse it, it has to occur in 2 steps. One is conversion of pyruvate to oxaloacetate, and then conversion of oxaloacetate to pyruvic acid, PEP. So this is a conversion of PEP to pyruvate is in 1 step, whereas back conversion of pyruvate to PEP is 2 steps. So we'll see this in the next slides, but this is also very important. This is what is called as a Cori cycle. In Cori cycle, lactate is converted into pyruvate, right? But and pyruvate can be converted into PEP, right? Do you agree? Because pyruvate is converted into lactate in anaerobic conditions. So lactate can also be a precursor for gluconeogenesis, and this is what is called as a Cori cycle. So what happens is after rigorous exercise, lactate produced by because of the anaerobic conditions in glycolysis, the skeletal muscles returns to the liver and is converted to glucose via this cycle called as Cori cycle. Because we know that lactate is converted into pyruvate, and pyruvate can be converted into phosphoenol pyruvate and can reverse the glycolysis to produce glucose. And the whole cycle occurs. The whole cycle is called as Cori cycle, and this occurs in the liver. So this is it, and there is always a the coordination between the liver and the muscles, because we know that muscle requires a lot of glucose for its function, and in case of exercise, muscles will automatically lose the glucose because all the glucose is utilized. So now there is a hypoxia, so that the pyruvate is converted into lactate, and this lactate has to be converted into glucose via pyruvate and phosphoenolpyruvate. So this is what is called as a Cori cycle, and this is explained like this. So the relation between the muscle and the liver is explained like this. See here, in the liver, we know that pyruvate can be converted into glucose. This is what is called as a reverse of glycolysis, that is gluconeogenesis. And the excess of glucose is converted as glycogen in the liver. Now, in the muscles, there is lactate, and this lactate is transported to the liver, and this lactate is converted into pyruvate in the liver, and pyruvate is converted into glucose. Or else, in muscles, there is a glycolysis, so glucose is converted into pyruvate. This pyruvate is converted into lactate under anaerobic conditions. So if pyruvate is undergoing transamination, it is converted into alanine. This alanine directly can be transported to the liver, and this alanine again, so pyruvate is transported from the muscle to the liver in the form of alanine. So pyruvate is undergoing transamination to become alanine, and through blood, this alanine is transported into the liver. This alanine is again converted into the pyruvate by the same process, transamination. So there are two ways by which the glycolytic product pyruvate can be transported to the liver. One is in the form of lactate or in the form of alanine. So there are two processes by which we can transport this pyruvate into the liver so that the gluconeogenesis is occurring. So this is what the relation between the pyruvate, alanine, and lactate. And Cori cycle, this is mainly occurring in the liver, which is conversion of glucose from the lactic acid. The same steps happen, and then that we call them as a gluconeogenesis. We'll go to the next slide. So it's a combined form. How we can get glucose. Yeah, so this is what I want to discuss actually. So this is glycolysis on the left, and on the right we have the gluconeogenesis. How the glucose is converted into pyruvic acid is discussed here in this left side part, in this part, whereas in this part how we can reverse the glycolysis is given in this part. See here, there is only one process. So this is the first one, the second one, and the third one. These are the three irreversible steps, and how they can be reversed is given in this part. So I think you know about glycolysis, so I did not repeat it again. Now, so here I am going to start the actual process of gluconeogenesis. First of all, let us discuss about the glycolysis. So the starting compound for glycolysis is glucose. We know it is converted into glucose 6-phosphate by hexokinase or glucokinase. Then glucose 6-phosphate is converted into fructose 6-phosphate with the help of isomerase, and this is a reversible process. So we need not worry about this step. So this isomerase can convert fructose to glucose. So fructose 6-phosphate to glucose 6-phosphate. So there is no problem with this step. The second step is the third step is conversion of fructose 6-phosphate to fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. So this is done by PFK1, that is phosphofructokinase 1. Now this is a second irreversible step. Next, with the help of aldolase, the aldehyde part is broken down into glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and dihydroxyacetone 3-phosphate, and we know that these are interconvertible by the help of triose phosphate isomerase. So there is no problem. Even if we have glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, we can generate fructose, because glyceraldehyde can be converted into dihydroxyacetone, and these two combine to form fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. So there is no problem. If we have the glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, that is enough. because this glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate can be converted into dihydroxyacetone 3-phosphate, and this dihydroxyacetone phosphate and glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate will combine to form fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. So there is no problem with this. And the next step in the glycolysis is conversion of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate into 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate. So this 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate is converted into again 3-phosphoglycerate, and then into 2-phosphoglycerate, and then into phosphoenol pyruvate. And this phosphoenol pyruvate is converted into pyruvate by the enzyme pyruvate kinase. So all these kinases, the steps that are involving kinases, excepting this phosphoglycerate kinase, are irreversible. So I have represented all the irreversible parts in pink, so that it will be easy for us to remember. Now, so till now what we have discussed is the glycolysis, but now I am going to discuss how to reverse it. So what happens is this pyruvate can be converted into oxaloacetate, and this oxaloacetate can be in turn converted into phosphoenol pyruvate. So this is a two-enzyme process, two-step process. So the enzymes that are involved are pyruvate carboxylase. So actually what happens is, so this is the first enzyme. We'll see what happens in the future slides. So pyruvate carboxylase is an enzyme which can convert pyruvate to oxaloacetate. So pyruvate is a 3-carbon compound, whereas oxaloacetate is a 4-carbon compound. So what happens is, this carboxylase is an enzyme which can add a carbon dioxide molecule. So this 3-carbon compound pyruvate is getting converted into 4-carbon compound. Now what happens is, again this 4-carbon compound has to be converted into 3-carbon compound. So there is a decarboxylation. So this PEP carboxylase can convert this oxaloacetate back into phosphoenol pyruvate. But the thing is, this step, the conversion of oxaloacetate into PEP, has to occur in two ways. So two things should occur simultaneously. That is, addition of phosphate and removal of carbon dioxide. These two things occur simultaneously. So this can be done by PEP carboxylase. Now, and from here, so now pyruvate is converted into phosphoenol pyruvate, and then this phosphoenol pyruvate is back converted into 2-phosphoglycerate, and this 2-phosphoglycerate is converted into 3-phosphoglycerate. 3-phosphoglycerate is converted into 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate by the addition of phosphate, and 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate can be converted back into glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. So glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate can be converted into dihydroxyacetone phosphate, and dihydroxyacetone phosphate and glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate can combine to form fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. Now, this fructose 1,6-bisphosphate can be converted into fructose 6-phosphate, but if it has to convert, there is a necessity of cleavage of 1-phosphate. So that cleavage of 1-phosphate can be done by the enzyme which is called as fructose 1,6-bisphosphatase. We know that phosphatase, phosphating means breaking down. So phosphatase can break down 1-phosphate so that fructose 1,6-bisphosphate can be converted into fructose 6-phosphate. So fructose 6-phosphate can be converted into glucose 6-phosphate as usual by the enzyme isomerase. So there is no problem. Now here also, if you want to break this phosphate, then only it is converted into glucose. So can you guess the enzyme here? The enzyme is glucose 6-phosphatase. So glucose 6-phosphatase is an enzyme which can convert glucose 6-phosphate back into glucose. And now this glucose is entering into the blood circulation so that it can be utilized by other body parts. So here we know that lactate can be converted into pyruvate. So lactate, pyruvate, oxaloacetate, and malate. So we didn't discuss about malate. So we are going to discuss about malate in the future slides. So I'll just stop the class here. Fill the form first, then we'll continue our discussion. Rejoin so that we can have a further discussion. So I hope you now understood how we can reverse the glycolysis. So the three steps that are irreversible in glycolysis can be reversed by the help of different mechanisms, as we discussed. The one is through oxalostate, then two other enzymes, that is the phosphatases. One is fructose 1,6 bisphosphate. The second one is glucose 6 phosphatase. So these two enzymes will act on the respective substrates to convert them into the respective products. And finally, we got glucose from pyruvate. Okay. So just fill this form, then we'll continue our discussion after we rejoin. So there is only 5 minutes of time. So meanwhile, we can fill this form. Yeah. So if you have any doubts till now what we discussed in this class, you can ask. Okay, so I hope you understood the class now. Then rejoin, we'll discuss 2 more slides and I'll try to give more information on gluconeogenesis. So rejoin. Now I'm ending the session.